I call this regular meeting of the Villa Park Planning and Zoning Commission to order. Roll call, Calvert.
Here.
Hofstra.
Here.
Jackson.
Here.
Case. Ludke.
Here.
Orlowski.
Here.
Romano.
Here.
Schlinsky. I too am present. With that, we have a quorum. First item of business would be approval of minutes. Anybody have any questions, comments, amendments to the agenda? Excuse me, to the minutes?
Nope. No.
Right,
Make a motion to approve.
Motion, second.
I'll second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the minutes are approved. So we have one item of business this evening. I won't run through the step-by-step because we don't have anyone from the public here. And that is PZ 23001, zoning ordinance text amendment. Consider text amendments to Appendix C, basic zoning ordinance to remove conflicts, clarify certain language, and follow best practice for Article 7 parking, Article 9 site design and performance standards, Article 14 measurements and definitions, petitioner Village of Villa Park. Stephanie, whenever you're ready, if you want to give us a little background.
Yes, thank you. So, as noted in the past, there's been some issues or deficiencies in the zoning ordinance. There was already a series of text amendments that were done within the last year, and they were recently adopted with the village board. And to further continue fixing the inconsistencies and adding clarification, we are proposing a few amendments to 3 different articles in the code. I can start running through all of them. Okay, so for Article 7, parking, we're looking at Section 7.10, accessible parking. Right now, the accessible parking section has a lot of the same information as the Illinois Accessibility Code, and there are a few stricter regulations in our local amendments, including not allowing a shared access aisle. So we are proposing to defer to the Illinois Accessibility Code for all of the parking standards without creating any extra restrictions. And then moving to Article 9, site design and performance standards. We are talking about Section 9.2 for fences. Right now, there's currently a blanket use of open mesh fences or chain link fences for industrial uses. The code does not make a distinction between public uses and industrial, which is a private use. So we are looking to make sure that they are considered two separate items. So we would allow the exemption to the fence regulations for all public uses, but restrict the zoning district to a height of 8 feet. The M zoning district. So the only difference between the two, the exemptions is the height. We just don't want the M zoning district to be any higher than 8 feet.
Okay.
And then we are clarifying where barbed wire is allowed to match the open mesh fences, which is again a continuation of the removal of the blanket use of open mesh fences for consistency. And then moving towards table 9.1. Table 9.1 is amended to remove inconsistencies of where fences are allowed on a lot based on height and type. We propose to split the exterior yard type into 2 separate categories, one being the corner side abutting a front yard and the other a corner side not abutting the front yard. It might be helpful to pull up in the staff memo on the 3rd page. We have a visual on what these different yard types look like in relation to each other. Where are we? Just when you're looking at it, the top example is corner side not abutting the front yard, and then the bottom right is corner side abutting a front yard. So that's one of the changes in this table. The other one is reducing the maximum solid fence height to 4 feet in the corner side abutting a front yard to match the maximum open fence height for corner sides abutting a front yard. This distinction we find is incredibly relevant to Villa Park because, as we found through the permit review process, not all corner lots are created equal. We see a lot of both of these types, which in the terms of the one on top, which is rear to rear, there's no issue having a 6-foot fence, but when you're talking about putting a 6-foot fence in what it would be somebody's front yard, it gets a little trickier. So the current code allows for a 6-foot fence to be installed in the exterior yard up to the rear property line. In the same location, the neighbor to the rear of that property would only be allowed to install a 4-foot fence because it's their front yard. So to avoid this type of discrepancy and ensure that the corner property does not lose their rear yard and that the property behind them can still have a relatively open front yard, we're proposing to reduce the fence height there. And then the last change in that table is removing note number 3 for interior side, as that would be made clear in the definition section for the yard types, which is figure 14-7. And then the next change in this section is corrected definitions for lot types. In different parts of the section, through lots are referred to as double frontage lots. So this is, they're facing two or have two front yards. So we're just changing that to stay consistent with the definition, and it reduces any confusion when classifying lots by making it clear that this has 2 front or 2 street yards. Next change is removing outdated graphics. So figure 14-7 will be the updated graphics. They are a little bit clearer on what we are looking for in terms of defining the different yards, and they match the rest of the code aesthetically. And then the attached exhibit, which is the one I told you on page 3 of the staff memo, is the one showing all the differences and where you can have 4 feet and 6 feet. And moving along to Article 9, Site Design and Performance Standards, Section 9.3, Visibility Triangles. We are correcting the language to define the driveway visibility triangle. Typically, this is also what the actual image that's in the code shows, is that the triangle is measured beginning at the intersection of the property line and the driveway edge. So this is where they are seen as they're pulling out for the sidewalk and the street. So we'll proposing to correct street in the code to property line to match the intent of figure 9-6 that's already in the code. And then for Article 14, measurements and definitions, Section 14.2, definitions, there's just an inconsistent with the alphabetical order of the definition, so that is being corrected. And then adding graphics for clarity for fence types. So what we consider an open fence and what we consider a solid fence, so people can visualize that. And then simple correction to the label of figure 13.6, which should be 14.6 as it's in Article 14. For the yard definitions, there was a few changes. One is creating separate definitions for side yard, splitting it into corner side and interior side to create that distinction, as they're both very different. And then this will remain consistent with the way that we're defining the rest of yards in the other sections. And so that is basically all. We recommend We support these changes as staff. I think that's it for me.
Okay, thank you. All right, don't see anyone from the public wishing to speak. So we will move on to questions from the commission. I think probably the easiest way to do this is kind of combine questions and discussion and just move through it that way.
Yeah.
Seems fair.
Order. So, let me get my straight here. So the Article 7 parking, that's, seems like a no-brainer to me. We're just striking all the language and replacing it with a reference to the state code, accessibility code. Did anybody have any issues with that?
No,
Nope, no issues.
All right. And then, so on the fence, on the site design and performance standards, let's go I'm looking at the redlined copy. The first one involving the fences in the M zoning district. As Stephanie said, that's just removing height limitations primarily and separating those two, not removing height limits, but setting a height limit at 8 feet. Any questions or comments on that?
So, I do have a question,
Yeah.
just to clarify with the fencing. So a chain link fence is still permitted in a front yard, is that true?
Are we talking generally or?
Generally, yes.
Yes. And that's something that I may be bringing up when we talk about fences generally.
Pardon me?
I said that's something I'm considering bringing up. So if
Okay.
you're talking about fences generally,
Yes, a
Yeah.
chain link fence in a front yard or a side yard, in the front of the
yes,
house.
currently a mesh fence, a chain link fence would be permitted in any yard,
Okay.
as I understand it. Correct, Stephanie? Yes.
An open fence.
Yeah.
Are we okay with that, generally?
I
Chain link fence in the front yard?
think there's going to be,
There's a lot of them.
what I would say is very soon, I think when we get into fences generally, we're going to have a discussion about that probably. But my answer is that I'm really not okay with it.
Okay, good.
So I think,
I think in the year 2023, we have a lot of fencing options when we
Yes.
start looking at different fences and things, and maybe that is something that we can maybe move away from,
yep, particularly in,
especially front yard.
right, and especially in industrial areas, it's a little different maybe.
I'm speaking residential.
Yes, yeah. On the, but there are no questions or comments on the industrial portion there. Not. We can move on to okay, so yeah, this gets into table 9.1 is being amended to remove consistencies of where fences are allowed on a lot based on height and type. So this, Larry, you're bringing up a point that I've been talking about with Mark, who's obviously not here tonight, and that's our current code allows solid fences in front yards at a height of 3 feet, and it allows chain link in any yard. Personally,
any yard in 4 feet.
Any yard what?
I think any yard at 4 feet, right?
chain link, yes,
Yeah.
correct. So you can have a 4-foot chain link fence in the front yard. I would agree with you in your sentiment that chain link fences probably are not appropriate in front yards. I think a broader question is the 3-foot solid fence. Also, is that something that we're comfortable with in front yards? I know I talked to Mark about this a little bit, and I know he said staff was generally supportive of limiting front yard fences to being transparent fences, open fences. That's different than what's presented here, but it is something I discussed with Mark when he was talking to me about the changes that he was proposing. So, first question is, how do people feel about chain link fences in front yards? Chain link fences specifically. Whether they should be allowed or prohibited. I say chain link, I would say any kind of mesh fence, because there's one in my neighborhood that is basically a step above chicken wire. It's that really thin gauge, anodized.
I'm not a fan of chain link fence.
I'm not either. I think it's something in a residential area that needs to be phased out.
In the front yards?
Pardon me?
In the front yards? Or are you looking at a blanket?
Ideally, completely, but definitely in the front yard.
Right.
I don't know, what about houses that,
Corner lots or...
corner house, yeah, that has a side yard that's considered street facing, but it's a long stretch and they want to do a chain link in their backyard, that's considered their backyard, the side yard.
It's not, actually, it's the corner side yard.
So can they
But-
put chain link
but-
there?
Yeah, they could, actually, under the current ordinance. We could,
But then they've got this other side facing the other street, which would be considered front yard, and they could do a chain link there. They'd have to switch up the fence line. Or the fencing on the fence line.
Could you just speak up a little bit?
In the front, on the other side, they'd have to, instead of going chain link all the way around, they'd have to break it up, and then you have to put fencing on the front side.
yeah,
Looking at a hodgepodge there.
it would be my thought that if you were not going to permit chain link in a front yard, you wouldn't permit it in a corner side yard either. I mean, interior side yards and rear yards are different. They don't have the same, it's not the same street fronting aesthetic.
I would say, well, I agree aesthetically. I don't personally like putting those limitations on people. I mean, there's a lot of these corner houses that the street-facing yard is all they have. There's no real backyard to it. The side yard usually is the garage on the other side, and you're really limiting those people to have any type of privacy or pet fencing or anything like that if you're going to take that option off the table.
Well, you'd still be able to have fence, but you'd have to install either, I mean, depending on how we end up, I mean, it
slant
wouldn't
fence or
eliminate an
something.
ornamental fence, like the modern, they're usually, they're not wrought iron anymore, but the wrought iron looking black ornamental fences, there's a couple in my neighborhood that have done that. One around the entire property, and it looks better than chain link. There's a house over on the Prairie Path that the entire lot, it's a corner house in the entire lot.
Okay. Then I
With the chain link,
maybe
and you
just-
kind of could,
So, yeah, if we're in the realm of discussing strictly material, I would be okay from
yeah, that's what,
chain link off the table, but
So it'd
allowing
be-
the fence still.
it would be yes. So then, so is there a consensus that, Mark said that he could craft a definition for mesh fence, which does not currently have a definition, and then add it to the table. Is that something that we would like to do for mesh fences and say, where would they not be permitted? Front yards and,
Yeah, I think it's
corner side yards?
open
street
fences
facing,
would
yeah.
be, open fences, we would have to have some kind of a long discussion to try to figure out how we're gonna make it fit or not fit within the village, because we definitely have a lot of yards that we would exclude some of the things that they would be able to do if we got rid of mesh fences in the front yard, to where I don't think would look right.
I'm not following you.
Yeah,
As far as having a solid fence around the whole front
No,
yard.
when I say a mesh fence, I'm speaking specifically of like a wire fence.
Okay.
You could still do a wood picket. You could
Okay.
still do
ornamental.
an ornamental iron fence, even if it's not technically iron. Right.
Can we table or at least just sort of set aside the material
Yeah.
one? Can we
Yeah.
jump over to height first, maybe, and see if or at least next, and see if we can come to some
Yeah.
understanding about that, and that might help inform material types. The 3-page red staff memo was helpful for me, particularly the third sheet, where it sort of had a mock block set up to sort of see how these fence height and where they can sort of occur on lots relative to each other and relative to the whole. I thought that was very, very helpful. And to the point where I, after sort of delving into this conversation in my own head, and sort of picking through the fine, the many layers, I kind of came to a point where I was looking at the intent of what we want to do with the code from sort of the street view, and how you're walking along these fences and these properties, or driving along the street and sort of seeing these and thinking about some sort of level of consistency. And obviously that's probably where some of those 4-foot height elements at this corner side yard came into play, and that totally made sense. As you can see at the bottom edge of that third page, highlighted in red, that totally is consistent with itself. I'm inclined to sort of support or steer the code language to say that anything that happens to occur in front yards and corner side yards, without exception, to sort of occur at that 4-foot level, to sort of be limited at that 4-foot level. I understand the 2 corner side yards abutting each other, like is referenced at the top edge of the drawing, that page 3, but there's still something disconcerting about walking along a 6-foot high fence as compared to a 4-foot high fence. There's just something about the effect that we're creating sort of at the public right of way, and people going up and down those sort of streets. And so I'm open to that conversation, but I could see, I kind of like the idea of anything that happens to touch a street right of way, a property line, to be at that 4-foot level. We can then get into the nuances of whether or not we have a 3-foot solid or is it 4-foot open, but a shorter height, and maintaining that consistency there. I'd be curious to hear what others think.
I would be supportive of that. I agree with you. Especially when the fence goes almost right up to the sidewalk and
Yes.
6 feet tall, it doesn't give a good look
No.
at all. And I realize at 4 feet, you're not going to get a lot of privacy within your side yard there, but you then have the option of doing some landscaping as well, if that's important to you,
Right.
to get that additional height. So I would be supportive of that
And that
as well.
screening capacity to sort of create that privacy, yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, and
Completely.
just to the, I'm kind of curious to hear what everybody thinks about this, but kind of to your point about the privacy, on a corner side, theoretically, somebody could pull in, like you see in the lower right, they're showing where you could do a 6-foot fence and where you could do a 4-foot fence. If you pull it back to, outside the corner side yard, you could still have that privacy if you wanted. You would have to give up some open space at the street to do that, but,
This is 20, generally 20 feet. Or 10 feet.
yeah, so what are other people's thoughts on that?
I don't know, I was just looking at some costs here. Does chain link fence generally cost less than other types of fencing? Are they about the same?
I have no idea.
I'm looking here and I see chain links, they say it's easiest to put up, and usually it is lower cost than some of the other materials that are out there. I don't know, I hate telling somebody what kind of fence they can put up or not. If they want a privacy fence, put it up. If they want a fence just to keep their dog from running off, chain link fence are good for that. And they're not high, you can see through them. I don't know, I'm torn on it, I guess.
There's no, there's not really a lot of maintenance that goes along with chain link fence.
Yeah, but on the topic of, materials is one topic, but, as far as like 4-foot versus 6-foot on, basically what Eric's really talking about is, as the code is written here before us, if a corner side yard, which what we're seeing in red in the bottom right, if a corner side yard abuts a front yard, which would be probably a situation similar to Eric's house. No, you've got 2 front yard. No, you.
No, I would have a
Corner similar to Eric's house. We would require them to have a 4-foot fence. Let's just say 4 foot. Don't worry about the material, 4 foot. If 2 corner side yards abut each other back to back, which those of you who know my house, that's my situation, we would allow them to have a 6-foot fence. It's one of those situations, abutting a front yard is somewhat more unique, but is there a reason aesthetically to not want 6-foot fences on that corner side yard situation at the top of the page as well? And what limitations does that put on property owners?
Yeah, I would say,
Beyond what we're already putting on another type of corner lot.
I think from a personal standpoint, I would always say side on the side of the individual. If they want privacy, they should be able to put a privacy fence. The outside onlooker opinion does not count as much as the owner of the house. If they want a 6-foot fence, I would understand that. I would just say that whatever we do, it should be consistent. If we were to take this example as a block, if I'm this person in the bottom, I'm saying, wait, I can't have a 6-foot fence, but this guy can facing the street. I would say consistency over anything overall, because this doesn't make sense that these people would be under different regulations.
Yeah.
Facing a street. So if we're going to say no higher than 4 foot if you are facing the public, then so be it. But I still would take that as a little bit.
Well, the only
overreach.
issue that I run into with the top, for instance, or the bottom, is the bottom, front yard facing this side, front yard facing this way, and then their driveway coming out right where that 6-foot fence is, right at the sidewalk.
Okay.
So that would be an issue for me.
Right, but I think that gets to the site triangle stuff that
Right.
sort of we're also talking about. And I think it also becomes the next conversation. You establish height, and then you establish
Right.
whether it's open or whether it's closed, right? And so,
I'd have to look.
from my perspective,
Site
since I
triangle.
sort of started this, and I'm like, yeah, let's maintain, if it's abutting the sidewalk in the public right-of-way, 4 feet should be the height limit consistently across, and then that becomes sort of a general rule about how we're sort of experiencing sort of the public realm as we're walking or driving and seeing things happening. Then the openness, I could see that being limited to only open and not give the option for a solid at the street.
Yeah.
Was sort of thinking I mean, how many front yard fences do we have in the village, right? I mean, I don't want to say that we have a lot, but we probably don't have a lot.
I would
think the
assume
corner lots
corner lots,
become the unique animal.
Yeah, I drove quite a few streets this afternoon on my way home from work. I mean, I can't give you a percentage of how many front yard fences we have. It's not a lot.
Yeah.
They're almost exclusively corner lots. Is it 1 in 10 corner lots? Probably. I don't think it's more than that. I was also looking for 6-foot solid fences that would be in corner side yards. And I would say that was probably 1 in 4, 1 in 5
Of the ones
houses
that,
of the ones that I saw. Admittedly, a lot of those were very small fence segments. Sometimes they didn't even entirely enclose a yard. They were kind of put up to provide some privacy, either adjacent to a garage or at the back, frequently with some gap up around where the driveway, because like Mike said, most of our corner lots do have a driveway that feeds onto the side street and not along the, not out to the front like we would in the interior lots. But one thing I did see, and this is a matter of aesthetics, is I did see a number of really well-designed 4-foot open fences in front yards and side yards that aesthetically are much more pleasing. To me, it's a matter of aesthetics, right? So, there's good fences make good neighbors, right? But I live in a neighborhood where most people don't have 6-foot fences. Most people have chain link fences, love them or hate them, but they're 4-foot, and the kids watched each other play across multiple yards and all those things. So, I'm not personally a 6-foot fence guy. What are the downsides of what are the advantages of a 6-foot wooden fence? Theoretically, more privacy without landscaping. And I don't know if it actually increases security, but it increased sense of security for the homeowner. Does it really increase security? Probably not much, because most people probably have a gate into their fence that's not locked. I don't know what other advantages there are beyond that.
Fences is a rough,
do we like that?
Yeah, I mean, it's
only because you're really,
has a dog.
I look at it, you're really,
A little dog.
you could really be restricting people in their property, which I actually wish the room was filled to,
You actually what?
I wish the room was filled so that I could get some feedback.
Well, here's the thing, we don't have to make a decision tonight. Anything that we would suggest to staff, I would want staff to consider for the next meeting, and I would want Probably us to consider and look at a little closer individually as well, because does it create some non-conforming fences? It would, but to me, fences are kind of like signage. They have a limited lifespan, and when that lifespan is over, you're going to replace it, not simply repair, not rebuild it, you're going to replace it entirely in place. And so if the ordinance changes, it's not locking you into a, you're replacing the fence, so you'd have to follow the new ordinances, I guess is what I'm trying to say. As opposed to not being able to do anything with your property, you would have to do a different type of fence when it came time to replace it.
This needed to be 3.
Fence isn't really a use so much as a design feature.
Okay, so
I think we need to take into consideration what are the reasons people are building these fences.
So if you
They
say,
build some aesthetics to some properties. People want privacy. Other people want to keep pests out of their yard, keep other animals out of their yard, or unwanted people walking on the sidewalk out of their yard. And I think if we put too much, rules around how you can build your fence, that's like saying, it's personal preference of why you're building a fence and what's the purpose. I've got a pool, I've got a hot tub, I want to build a privacy fence. And now you're telling me I can't build a 6-foot privacy fence because it's too close to the sidewalk. Wow, as a homeowner, I'm not going to like that. I want to have some privacy so I can run around in my swimsuit and be in my pool, right? But then you've got the other side too. What?
You could still build a 6-foot fence, you would just have to build it farther onto your own property.
Right.
Which your pool couldn't be in your side yard anyway.
Right. But I'm just saying, people do it for different reasons.
Yeah.
I get what you're saying. I don't know. I guess I'll just sum it up in my thoughts. It's kind of like, each person has their own haircut. Some people like short hair, some people like long hair. Some people like big fences, some people like, short fences. Who are we to say whether they can have a 4-foot fence or a 6-foot fence? Or what have you. I know it's our job, but I think that we're putting too much, control over it. If you want to have a privacy fence, there's already a bunch of privacy fences that are right up along the sidewalk in the neighborhood. And I get what you're saying. Over time, they'll break, they'll fade. People will repair them or do whatever, and then there'll be, no choice but to have a 4-foot fence put up. I get it.
Yeah.
But I just think that people should have a choice. That's my opinion.
All right, so what I'm hearing is that the corner side yard fence is a complicated issue.
Yes.
And I'm guessing Eric didn't think it would be not complicated.
when
he brought it up.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
I mean, the bottom right, I already have a neighbor that has that. They have, if we were to make them only have a 4-foot fence along the sidewalk and then bring a 6-foot fence up to their house throughout it.
No, they don't have to do that, though.
No, I know, but if they wanted a privacy fence, it would trash their whole yard to where it would just be so unusable. So yeah, we would have a lot of corner lots that we really wouldn't know what to do with, just by the way they're designed.
Problem is, we already do.
No,
we already have complications, and most people put up fence without permits anyway.
right, but if something happened to their fence on Saturday in a windstorm, and then they came to the village on Monday to get their fence repaired, and we passed this, they would not be able to put the same fence up. And me as a homeowner, I would have a meltdown.
Well, I'm sure if your fence was damaged, you would be able to replace it in place, which would be different than
Yeah, that
replacing a fence.
that
I know what you're saying.
So yeah, this would be, I would really need some,
it's tricky, 'cause do you think it'd be worth,
need some input from some public, just get an idea on how they would feel about it.
input that way, or have staff kind of look at some surrounding villages and see how they handle corner fence heights, just for frame of reference? Maybe that'd be a good idea.
Is actually, I did look up for Village of Walmart. They have the same distinction of corner, side, abutting front yard. They have it at max 4 feet.
Yes, yeah, Lombard,
So they could have a block like this, basically, with these side yards being 6 foot on the street?
Lombard's is very close to what staff is proposing. And then I looked up Elmhurst's, and Elmhurst is exactly what ours is now, almost verbatim. They also have the very, what I find the very odd 3 foot solid or 4 foot
Open.
open fence in the front yard. So, let's set,
I
Either
guess
one of
my-
those communities discuss chain link fencing specifically.
one of the two doesn't allow it.
Does not allow chain
One of
link.
the two does not allow it. In front yards. I remember reading that, because I just looked at them this afternoon. I can't remember which one. It's on there. They have a little handout sheet for permits. And one of them does not permit mesh fences in front yards.
I'm gonna go with Elmhurst on that one.
So,
I guess my struggle would be if this scenario in the bottom right, if we had that, and then something happened to the fence, and they had to repair the fence, they're gonna get a permit to repair it. If the village was gonna say, oh, well, no, you can't put it back like that because it's against our code, then I would have a problem with it. If it was existing like that, I would have to have it stay that way.
I think it depends on the case, what would happen to it. There is a section in the non-conformity section where it says if it's damaged by acts of God, like natural disaster, I'm not sure if we would consider like a windstorm part of that, but in those type of cases, when it's incidental, they are allowed to place the non-conformity back the way that it was.
Because I mean, if the person moved into that house for the reasons that the yard was laid out, and they had a 6 foot fence along the sidewalk, and then regardless of what happened to the fence, and then we didn't allow them to put the same fence back up that they had, then yeah, I would have a rough one with that one. If it's the same homeowner. I mean, if somebody came and just tore the fence down, and it wasn't an act of God, then, and they had no control over it, then yeah, that's where I guess I would have an issue with.
So I'd have to look, because typically with non-conforming uses, there's also like a percentage of damage. Or sometimes it's a dollar value, percentage dollar value. I don't know which it is in our code, or if we have either. But, I mean, repairing a fence is different than, putting up a new fence or replacing an entire fence, conforming or non-conforming. So,
I guess we need to break it down. First of all, is there any consideration that the street-facing fence height be consistent? Where would we lean on that? We allow for,
well,
if we want to say no more 6 foot fences at the street or at the sidewalk line, is that something we even want to entertain? Or do we want to kind of keep it as proposed here where it can stay as long as it's not abutting?
so I understand the aesthetic and, let's call it land use, because land rights, I guess, that you're looking at in this lower right, and why that would be proposed, and that makes perfect sense to me. Because if you're the owner of the home that's fronting the street that's the south edge of the graphic, and your neighbor's running a 6 foot fence all the way up to your front property line. And now standing in your yard, you can't even see up the sidewalk.
You what?
You can't see up the sidewalk. If your neighbor on the other side tried to do it, they wouldn't be able to. So that's coming down to it's a distinction in the way the code is written and the way lots adjoin. So I get that one, and I'm perfectly fine with that one.
Right.
Strongly in favor of that one. I'm also generally in favor with what Eric has suggested for corner side yards that abut at the rear property line, personally. But I understand everybody up here might not be. Where it would be a 4 foot instead of 6.
What does everyone think of that? Is that
I
something?
guess, I think we know where Ken stands. There's not a consensus. I mean, Ken's consensus is that he wants people to do what they, especially in the rear yard, correct? That
Yeah, and some of them are so upset, if they want a privacy fence, I don't know. That's my only thing. Because I've seen issues, you know, well, who up here said good fences make good neighbors, but where you want, maybe you want a privacy fence so you have, you know, something going on, who knows? But, you know, those are gonna be one-off cases too, if it's a, you know, a side yard with a corner lot.
yeah, we don't have a ton of them, and it
We gotta
would.
just figure out how that would work. if
Yeah,
somebody
and it
wanted
wouldn't
those fences up.
necessarily prohibit it either. It would just mean you'd have to set it back to, you know, your building line or something like that. It just couldn't be on the sidewalk.
Yeah. So I'm gonna put Ken in the 6 foot camp. How about you, Larry? In the situation at the top of the page, we have 2 quarter side yards abutting at the rear. Are you in the 4 foot camp or the 6 foot camp? Assuming that we allow solid fences in backyards.
I would be more in the 4 foot
Okay.
side.
Mike? 6 foot?
I'm a 6.
You're a 6 footer? I'm in the 4 foot. You two down here?
Well, since I brought it up, I'm not changing my mind. I'm a stubborn German.
And you don't, you don't have to be the tie-breaking vote, but what's your sense?
I mean, what I said before is I'm more.
But you are the tiebreaker.
I know.
It's not a vote, because I'm
No,
going to
no,
ask
it's just
staff to
I-
investigate it and give us
It's,
their
I
opinion.
would want consistency, because if I'm this guy, I'm aggravated that I can't have the same fence as this guy. It makes no sense. So it's good for one is good for all, especially if they can go back to their house line and then still put their 6 foot fence up if they want to. It just can't abut the sidewalk. So I would be, and I guess that makes me a 4 footer, yeah.
Okay, so you're in the 4 foot fence. Okay, so that answers that. Now, the other play, so that's kind of moves us into one issue that's kind of a combination of height and materials. Our current code allows 3 foot solid fence in the front yard. Oddly enough, so does Elmhurst's. I don't know if anyone has seen what a 3 foot solid fence looks like in a front yard. Do you have a picture of that, Stephanie, of that house, or can you? But this is what a 3 foot solid fence looks like in a front yard.
Thank you. Yeah, that's 6 feet.
Yeah, that's their big.
It might be more from the side.
Well, that's the way, yeah,
There it
there
is.
you go.
It's over
That's
here.
the front.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can.
Yeah, it's to the far right of the picture. You can see where it dips down.
And this fence is how tall, Jason, again?
The
3 feet?
The short one is, yeah, it's 3 feet, but they've got 4 foot posts.
Yeah, they
So that,
just future-proofed it.
yeah, that's,
Oh, okay, when we get to the corner, okay. I
yeah,
Yes.
at the corner.
I see. And this is in Villa Park.
Yes, it is, I won't call it out, but yes, it is. I'll tell you after the hearing.
Wisconsin, Madison.
Oh, it's
on the paper.
Address is on it.
Apparently,
It's at Wisconsin.
we don't have anything in the code about the
Yeah,
height of the post, apparently.
Actually, we do.
I thought
It can't, it can't be more than, I believe, 6 inches taller than the height of the fence.
Yes.
So we actually do have something in the ordinance about that, which tells you that probably was not a permitted fence.
Yeah, they were.
Yeah, they have to do that.
Site triangle.
The guy pulling out
So-
doesn't get blocked off.
I'm of the strong opinion, everybody can have their own opinion, weak or strong,
Yes.
but I'm of the strong opinion that solid fences, 3 foot or 4 foot or 6 foot, don't belong in front yards. Solid fence.
What about corner side yards?
Yeah, how do you distinguish where that line is?
Solid fences,
Like that setup? That setup?
a 4-foot fence on a corner side yard, I actually don't really have a problem with that, personally.
Say that again, Jason?
Solid fence, 4-foot solid fence in a side yard, corner side yard.
That's probably what.
I'd be okay with that.
What'd you say?
I would be okay with that, I would agree, yes.
So on the solid fence in front yard, regardless of height, is there anybody that would be opposed to changing that? So,
On the solid fence,
yeah,
not allowed
not allowed.
At any height.
at any
Any
height.
height in front yards.
I'm
Okay
in.
with that.
I'm okay with that.
Is anybody opposed to that?
Make your notes. Then let's move on to the corner side.
But I do have one comment
Huh?
for solid.
When you're making the distinction between solid and the front, you would reduce from 75 to 50%, so we can still include white picket fences, like that style.
Yes, okay, that's,
That idea?
yeah. Would we do that for generally the definition of solid? Is that what you're recommending? Okay. So I think, yeah. Okay. Is there anybody who would be opposed to allowing a 4-foot solid fence in a corner side yard? Or what are your thoughts on it, I guess, versus open fence?
Corner side, I would rather go with the 6 foot, just like the guy.
Yeah, no, I guess that's true. But if you were given just a 4-foot fence, you don't, well, I guess if you're fine with the 6-foot solid fence, you're fine with the 4-foot solid fence,
Yeah, I would
right?
think, given the unique occurrence of that, sort of across the village, and if there was a fence that happened to be positioned in the side yard, and they had one also coming around from the front and then wrapping around to the side, and then obviously in the front, we would have it open, it would be an open fence, and then at some point in time, it could transition to a solid.
Well, wouldn't your visibility triangle we could use that to take care of your,
That will always come into play.
Right, well, and
yes.
that would be
Especially when
your-
you have a solid fence at 4 feet.
that would be your merge of the two different fences.
Potentially, yes.
Okay. Okay, I want to make sure I'm getting this right. Because I think the best thing to do when we're done with this is to have staff take this back,
Yes.
look it over, bring it back to us. I just want to be able to give them recommendations on what we're thinking and how we're leaning, and some of it's close. Okay, now that we're back to materials, mesh fence. When I spoke to Mark, he said he was generally supportive of not permitting mesh fences, and by mesh, you're primarily talking chain link, but not permitting mesh fences in front yards. I didn't ask him his opinion on that. Ask his opinion beyond that.
And I guess I'll throw the 1 out of a million. I would allow the chain link mesh fence, whatever you'd like to call it, if they were going to put bushes in their front yard. So not have bushes and then another type of expensive decorative fence behind the bushes. So if they have dogs and they want to keep the dogs in the yard, but they're going to put landscape around the whole front yard, would we require them to put a fancy open fence around the bushes? Or would they be able to get away with putting chain link?
Again, I'm not following you.
Because if we're going to take chain link out of the equation, but this person wants to put a 4-foot fence around their front yard,
Okay,
but they want to put bushes on the outside of the fence,
okay.
do we make them put chain link or do we make them put something other than that?
I would make
See.
them put a pretty fence.
Okay.
A pretty fence.
I think if you're going to say no chain link, it gets too complicated if you say no chain link, except for bushes and this, and then
Yeah.
it's an aesthetic, choice, and
Bushes don't last forever.
And
Somebody
bushes,
has to trim them, and then you get into all of those other variables with that. And why is their dog in the front yard anyway? If it's a single-family home, they have a backyard. So,
and then my argument would
if
also,
it's a 1 in a million, then I don't think that's the answer for the 1 in a million one.
And I guess it's just, that's one of them that I know we have several of those in the village.
well, they can keep it. I'm not telling them they can't have it if they've already got it. We're trying to make things look a little tidier. There's a house on the Prairie Path it's a huge lot. It's got a 4-foot chain link fence all the way around the property line to the corner. And it's aged. It's not a good look. I don't know. If it was a 4-foot ornamental fence, would I find it less unappealing? Probably. And I have a chain link fence on my rear line. So are we generally supportive of not having mesh fences in front yards? Is that what I'm hearing?
I think we're generally supportive of
Yeah.
Is
that.
anybody opposed to that other than Mike's 1 in a million?
No, I'm fine.
1 in 7,000.
And then I guess that raises the question about mesh fences in corner side yards. How do we feel about that? That's where I personally start to feel like we're reaching a bit. But I understand Commissioner Calvert's point about there's a lot of fences and a lot of them probably are not any more expensive than chain link these days, given the price of steel. So, how do people feel about that? In either corner side scenario, I guess.
I mean, do we want to take the stance as a village that no chain link at all? Is that, because I know that's kind of been thrown around here. Or are we going to allow choice of material as long as it's just not in the front? 'Cause that becomes really the question.
Get rid of the chain link, as long as you can have the 6-foot privacy on the bottom right.
I don't know, you think about chain link, you've got chain link in the back of your property, Jason, say you
Yes,
sell
I
your
do.
house, and somebody moves in and they get a dog and they want to finish off that chain link fence area to keep a dog in your backyard after you move out. And so are they gonna put up a big privacy fence or, a wooden fence or something all the way around the whole backyard and the side yard there? I think we can't ban something. I mean, just because a few of us don't like the aesthetics of it, when it's commonly used in a lot of other towns, villages, and cities. I mean, I can understand setting something up for the front yard, we want to keep things looking nice, I get that. The side yards, if they hit a street, I mean,
That's what I'm getting at.
we
Personally,
gotta let them make their decision on what's gonna work best for their situation. I think if we ban chain link altogether, that's kinda
well, yeah, I'm
a
actually,
little overstepping any boundaries, I think, that we should as a village for the people that live there.
I personally wouldn't be in favor of banning it everywhere. I mean, I'm thinking more street frontages and whether or not
Down with
that's
that,
appropriate.
yeah.
But then it comes back to that side yard. Does that become a street frontage scenario there?
Yeah.
Right, it does, so.
I remember looking at a house over on Cornell, and it really had no backyard. All it had was the front yard, the side yard, and the people that ended up buying it, they put chain link fence all the way around for their animals, and there really is no backyard. It's just a side yard and front yard for the dogs to run.
Yeah.
And it's a nice looking chain link fence, you know? But, yeah, it is new. Ish. So I think that would have been harsh to make them put up, a different kind of fence.
How do you feel about that one, Larry? I think I have an idea, but I just want to hear you.
You know, I mean, I said it earlier, I think there's a lot of fencing options that you can explore now besides chain link. And on those side yards,
And that's a but.
I would like to see the chain link go away from that. You know, and I mean, I get it, there's a lot of these existing in the village already, but, you know, when you buy a house and it's on the corner lot, there's pros and cons of that. And those are things you need to kind of think through before you buy the house, I think. And knowing full well that your side yard, or your backyard, essentially your side yard, is visible to passersby.
Okay.
So I'm in favor of the 4-foot, more of a decorative fence, and moving away from chain link that is in the front yard and visible side yards.
Okay. How about you on the corner side yards, Mike? You were in the chain link camp or the ornamental fence camp?
Or either ornamental,
Okay.
but I would still give them the option on that corner side yard if they wanted to do a 6-foot privacy fence.
Gotcha.
You know,
How do you feel on that?
I don't like chain link fence anywhere.
Okay. So,
I've never been a fan of it.
okay, so you do not, okay, well, that's an easy one. Eric?
I would be in that camp as well. Not-
Okay.
I mean, but
But I think that's onerous on the,
I think prohibiting it everywhere is onerous and not realistic, but I think street fronting is a different beast.
I would take that approach too. How we're going to classify the front yard, a side view is the same idea. It's the whole, somebody's looking at it.
All right, so then I think that gets to all the nitty gritty on the fences before I communicate to Stephanie what I think we want, or at least want staff to look at. Does anybody else have any comments basically on this heights table and materials table?
I have no other.
Okay.
What scenario would we do if we had I guess you'd call it a corner side yard adjacent to a parking lot? I'm going to use Ardmore School as an example, because Ardmore School did their renovations. The gentleman that would be in this front corner side yard to the parking lot had a privacy fence, and then when District 45 did their new fence, they put up a 6-foot chain link fence. And he requested that they replaced the 6-foot privacy fence, because now when he goes in his backyard, all he sees are all these cars parked in his yard.
Well, so what I would say about that is that our code treats schools differently. And that may not be appropriate, but it does. And that's one of the things that, if you flip back to exemptions, open mesh-type fences enclosing school sites, park and recreation uses, or utility and public uses are exempt from the fence regulations of this section.
So we're gonna force it on everybody that's a citizen that lives in their own house, or we're gonna let the government run free and put up chain link fences 8, 10, 15 feet. I'm exaggerating a little, but I don't know. That's why I'm against. I think we all get our own choice, freedom of choice. But I'm down with the front yard. We want everything to look aesthetically pleasing. Chain link fences in the front yard, you know, aren't really that attractive.
And I'd have to look at that situation, but that's a situation where we probably, the village probably should have required them to put up a screen fence. But
Yeah, that's here.
adjacent to a parking lot, I don't know what our code requires. And if it's different with the school.
Is that current? This is current.
So I think, Stephanie, what I'm hearing up here
Parking lot? No, I guess it's not done. That's what it was.
is that we want to look at the idea of 4-foot fences in all corner side yards.
Oh, yes.
No mesh fences in front and corner side yards. And elimination of solid fences in front yards as well. Am I missing anything?
I think
Sounds right.
one thing would be defining chain link versus open.
Yes, so that would be a definition that would need to be added. I know Mark said that he could craft a definition. I don't know if he's in the state to craft definitions right now, but and then the other change that you mentioned, Stephanie, was potentially changing the definition of open to 50% rather than 75%, because that would allow for a more picket type fence. How do we feel about that?
Okay with that.
I'm okay with that.
I'm okay with that.
Okay. It's actually a very nice one on Ardmore. Okay. So, I guess, Stephanie, do you have any questions about any of that, or does all that make sense to you to look at? And
That all did make sense.
what I would say is, you know, take a look at that, and if there's anything that you guys think is problematic, let us know, and we can bring it back and just, you know, would you prefer we continue this and then you guys can put that together, or we can do it all and approve it at the next meeting?
We can do that, or we can do like a motion through the village board. We would do the updates and talk to you before it goes to village board.
Okay. Now let's see what else we've got here real quick. That's so we're replacing graphics, no issues with that. Correcting definitions of lot types. The change to the site triangles, that's all straightforward, nobody's got any issues with that or any changes to the definitions. It all seems pretty straightforward.
Yes.
The rest of it's all just text and definitions.
A little thicker on the slants.
So I guess that where that leaves us is we have two options. We could continue, we can continue this and have staff bring it back to us and make a final vote in a month, or as Stephanie suggested, we can pass the recommendations to tonight, and
Our recommendations?
our recommendations to, yeah, we would be recommending the changes that we proposed. As much as I want to do that for expediency, I wonder if it makes sense to have it come back, so there's no,
I would continue it.
so
Because we
there's,
really only need to review that,
yeah.
that one
So there's
definition of
no-
the fence, so the rest of it is as good as it stands, right?
I would do a continuance. Just have them put it all in writing, get the definition.
Yeah, that way there's, right.
That way, if there's something that we still got overlooked, we don't have to open it back up.
Okay. As much as I don't want to talk about fences again, I do think that's probably the best idea.
Agreed.
Just so we know we're all on the same page, we're getting exactly what we expect, and then we can pass it to the village board knowing that. So our next meeting is June 8th.
May?
May.
Oh, right.
Skipping a month here.
I'm trying to get,
Trying to skip it.
Be May 11th.
I think speaking for Eric here too, there's a lot going on in the next month when you've got a senior.
Regulations, yes.
Well, I think the first is a Monday, correct?
Yes, it'd be May 11th.
Yeah.
The next meeting would be May 11th. So is there a motion to continue PZ 23001 to a date certain of May 11th?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so that is continued to the next meeting, and then, any other business from, anything you want to bring to our attention, Stephanie, or President Kazone, either one? All right, the one item, small item of business is that, if anyone missed it, the petition that was before us last week was not approved by the village board for the religious assembly and the museum and cultural use on Madison.
Both of them were,
It's worth watching.
Yes,
both of them?
unanimously,
It's worth watching.
not passed.
Just pass on it.
Anybody else have anything they want to add, or should we get out of here?
Yeah, I was gonna, for the next meeting, could we get some updates on the projects going on in town? Not in reference to any of the streets or anything, but some of the other projects, as far as where we stand on those. Some of it is, I guess, basically just to let the public that's watching the meetings know, so they'll have an idea of what's going on, because there's not a lot of, I guess I should say, not a lot of village comments going out to the public, so I figure we'll get something.
Any particular projects you'd like to know more about, Mike?
Our three major ones, well, actually, the two major ones, the one on Villa and the one on Ardmore. I think the one on Villa, that one's kind of on hold until we get the TIF done,
Is that the union?
or RDA.
Yeah, all right, anybody else got anything they want to add or ask, or?
President Kuzone, was the The Lufkin, the tree, all the willows down, was that for the new plan, or was there something wrong with the trees or something?
What was it?
Lufkin Park,
Lufkin Park, yeah, there's a project.
Lufkin.
The trees coming down were part of the Lufkin Pond expansion for the drainage basin there.
Okay.
Which is the final step of that whole project. The county, since the county has a lot of money involved and they are kind of driving that project, they asked us to cut the trees down now because there's some, I forget what exactly type of bat it is, but there's a bat that mates in those trees. So they wanted the trees down before the mating season started. So that's why they came down early, but they had to come down anyway for the expansion.
Okay, so, I knew there was the whole plan, but the pond is getting,
It's going to be expanded, correct, as part of that, the redevelopment there, the Lufkin Park. Splash pad and a walking path, and there'll be a pier that's going to be going in for the pond there too.
Yeah, I think there's more native plantings and things like that proposed too. And like President Gazone said, it's a bat, that's an endangered bat. And if you, it's a huge window when you can't cut the trees down, and if,
Really?
yeah. It basically, yeah, there's something like a 4 or 5 month span between like early winter and very early spring when you can cut down
And if-
certain types of trees, and then
The rest of the time.
it's good to know. I had a lot of people asking me, I'm like, I don't know.
Wow.
No problem. Anything else? Any other questions?
How about all the trees by Lions?
How about
By
all the trees,
Lions?
what?
By Lions Park.
It's part of the rec center. The rec center, once that project should be going this summer or late fall. The beginning of that construction.
anyone else got anything? All right, motion to adjourn.
So be.
Second.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned.